What happens when you push through burnout? Not once, but twice. It even got to the point when their therapist told them to quit because of the burnout. And hopefully by the end of the video, we'll have a better understanding on how to deal with stress, how to deal with burnout, and making sure we're putting ourselves first. This story about burnout really hits home. I was burnt out after achieving my dream job in London. Not only was I trying to push through this burnout, I was also dealing with an autoimmune disease. The struggle was real, and you can watch the video here, which explains a little bit more. Now I'm here, I'm out of the burnout zone, and I help people move through it. So much so that this is now my full-time job. I help individuals, such as yourself, who are experiencing stress and burnout with one-on-one private coaching. So if that's something you're interested in, click the link below. And if you're wanting to share your own burnout story, you're welcome to leave a comment, or there's a link in the description with the form you can fill out. So this is on the subreddit r/productivity by Gucci Mucci, but we're just going to call him G. So he says, I've had burnout twice. First when I started my full-time job and full-time university studies at the same time. I felt that university wasn't providing any extra value, so I decided to quit after I got very sick from all the stress managing both. I think it's really evident when you are trying to juggle work, study, life, and everything in between, that does get too much. But I think it's also a struggle to also value the education on university unimportant, especially when we are in such a stressed state. We tend not to make the best judgments. Not only we're trying to juggle our finances, our education, but we're also trying to juggle our sleep, our relationships with our family, partners. And if we get really stressed, especially since G here has more or less decided to quit studying after doing full-time employment and full-time study, as somebody who's got a psych degree, I know that is extremely challenging. So burnout is super inevitable. And if you can balance that, I'd love to hear your tips and tricks, because the amount of time, energy, and effort to not only learn, but also to work a job, to live, to survive is paramount. But it's also hard to know what's best for us when we are in that stress state. If we are struggling, we're not sleeping well, we're not eating well, we're burning out, our decisions aren't our decisions anymore. Normally they're reflexes or worries that creep in. When we've taken care of our foundations, our sleep, our nutrition, our movement, then we kind of have a baseline of what we want and what we need. But when we're in a stressed state, there's none of that there. There's no ability to compete. The second time was 4 years later. I somewhat surprisingly lost my job after being burnt out for about 6 months. I wanted to quit, and then the decision was made for me with some additional financial compensation. I think it's really difficult to know when to stop. We have an ability to either prioritize ourselves too much or too little. When the decision gets taken away from us, we feel like we've lost power. So the fact that you were so burnt out that your job could see that and decided that you were maybe not a right fit for the environment, or you weren't coping that well, it's hard. Because most of the time, I think the people around us can see with clarity compared to ourselves. Sometimes we struggle to see what's right in front of us. But if you're worried and thinking that you're burnt out, there's probably a high chance that you are. It's just like driving in a car with a check engine light on. You can either pull over and sort it out, or you can keep driving and just hope that it just doesn't break. And I think that's the struggle with it all. We need to be able to catch ourselves before it gets to this stage. And how long is a state of prolonged stress, burnout, and anxiety for? Some people can last a couple weeks, some people can last a couple years. Similar to servicing a car. Make sure you take care of your car, make sure you take care of yourself. The fact that G burnt out a second time just highlights how a lot of the lessons that we need to learn repeatedly over a period of time. I found the things that impact myself and my life the most are things that I learned 5 years ago, and I just have to keep relearning them over and over again. It also makes me think about how when you're younger, your parents have a really good ability to judge who's right for you and who's not, be it friends or partners. And I remember my mum always knowing how to know if a person was right for me or not. And I think so many people can see that. They can see all the issues or how heightened you are, how stressed or how burnt out you are. So maybe asking a really hard and difficult question to the people around you if you are feeling burnt out. Maybe bringing that conversation up, because the first step is bringing some awareness to it. Making sure you're ready to go on the journey of actually dealing with it compared to just sweeping it under the rug. Back then, I was seeing a therapist. Ironically, expensed by my employer, who let me go. And even she said, you should leave. We obviously have very little information to work with here. From the sounds of it, your employer was actually really good to you. The fact that they were able to expense a therapist for you is amazing. It means that you were valued, they valued your mental health as well. The fact that the therapist gave the advice for you to quit and you didn't adhere to that advice and you had to wait until your employer took the steps to dismiss you makes me question if this is something that's even more deep-rooted in yourself and in your life than just being burnt out with work. Because you have to make sure that you take the time to listen to the people around you especially the people who specialize stress or burnout, or therapy, and if they say something, probably a good chance that it's true. Compared to the first time, I pushed myself even harder this time because I was competing another university degree at the same time. This time I finished. Initially, I felt good about pushing myself and not quitting school. However, it had unexpected long-term health impacts, which I learned about later. The fact that you have gone back to university to do the exact same thing is so extreme. After the first time, you would go, this isn't probably a good idea for juggling all this education and life at the same time. I think we tend to forget about how it will affect the future version of ourselves. Taking that step up and trying to not only work full-time but study full-time again after all these years, I think we tend to forget the lessons. I think this goes back to the lessons. We have to keep relearning the lessons over and over again until we finally get it. And we tend to forget what it will do to affect the future version of ourselves. Will this make ourselves better? Will it help ourselves? We make sure that we're putting ourselves first, our future version of ourselves, making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because there's some possibilities that it won't end well. After I got laid off, I took 2.5 months off. I traveled quite a bit, did not search for a job or apply anywhere. I made a promise to myself to start looking after those 2.5 months. I have done this a lot in my life where I've used travel as an escape, and I've quickly realized that I was using it to cope with my emotions. And I think travel is good, don't get me wrong, I think it's needed. And for this case, I think traveling for 2.5 months is perfect, because you remove yourself from your environment, you remove yourself from any habitual triggers, you're able to relax, be in a different location, as well as not be surrounded by people that you might feel judged by. You completely remove yourself from any of those biases. But in the same sense, you tend to prolong the healing or prolong the process of dealing with the situation, especially if you come back to the job or you come back to the same apartment or city, because the same habits are still there. The same actions that you'll do that got you stressed and burnt out in the first place might still be repeated. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on the processes of our everyday life. Are we making sure that we're eating well, we're sleeping well, we're not getting too caffeinated, we're not having to deal with our problems in negative ways? Because after travel, we come back to it all. Nothing's changed. I got the next job I applied for in a new role and a new industry. It was exactly what I had studied, so I was very happy. I took the time to think, digest, and apply to a job that filled all my requirements. This is amazing. Working a job that you want to work, in a field that you want to be in a company that you want to be a part of. You've hit the absolute dream. But it's still the thing where burnout can creep in. I think so many people associate burnout with the job and what they're doing for work, and not the processes and everything that they're doing around the job to support themselves. Don't get me wrong, my job 100% burnt me out, but also my actions and everything around that job contributed to my own downfall. But making sure that we are in an environment that we enjoy, we want to go to, is super important. And this is not saying to follow your dream job and do exactly what you want to do in that department, because the grass is not always greener. It's green where you water it. Making sure when we are having that time away, to make sure that we are having that space for clarity, to have these questions that we might not have asked previously, and to develop on that further is amazing. And the fact that G here spent 2.5 months relaxing, getting to a stage of allowing his body or their body to decompress and recheck your priorities. Understand which direction you want to head into compared to just storming ahead. I've had serious health problems due to burnout and stress, which changed me so that I don't really care about my job that much anymore. And I prioritize everything else over work. I think this is unfortunately true for a lot of people, especially with burnout becoming so prevalent. And the consequences are not only our physical health, but our mental health. Because all we want to do is fix ourselves, get rid of the situation, get rid of the thing that's making us uncomfortable. But with burnout, we don't really get to pick and choose when that occurs. And it normally happens at the absolute worst time. And the unfortunate fact is, these negative health consequences that you're experiencing due to being burnt out is really prevalent and evident. So much research has been shown that burnout and stress cause so many issues to us. So making sure we're able to identify them and fix them before it all goes to shit is really important. The culmination of this was after I lost my job and took 2.5 months off. I'm in recovery now, feeling much better, but the important thing is I know I'm not going to push those boundaries anymore. When possible, I prioritize my tasks. I'm asking myself almost anything. Do I need to complete this now? Today, tomorrow, next week? Can it wait? Is it really important to do this one thing now or no? I try to spend more time outdoors. Thank you for sharing a story about burnout, my friend. And I'm glad that there is some self-awareness and some self-prioritization happening. The fact that you can decide how much energy you want to give a task and making sure that you're reviewing if it is time sensitive, if it needs to happen today or tomorrow or next week. I think for so many of us, our little voice in our head tells us that it needs to happen now, that we need to get $1 million right this second, otherwise we fail. When your health's been taken away and that is your priority, you understand that you need to put yourself first. I'm happy that G has had some time to reflect, to prioritize himself, and to know that their health is the most important thing. It breaks my heart to hear that their health has deteriorated to become something that's a burden on them, and I understand that firsthand, going through my autoimmune disease. And all I can do is hope that they've been able to manage the symptoms and put some positive steps forward. And I think this is a lesson for all of us to know. We need to make sure we stop glorifying this ability to push through. It doesn't help us in any way. Taking time back to rest, to recuperate for our physical and mental health is vitally important. It doesn't make you weak, just like sharpening an axe. I think it's also important that we make sure that we don't wait for crisis to enact change. We don't want to wait until there's crisis to correct the course. We need to make sure we're proactive with the things that we're doing. We're eating well, we're sleeping well, we're working well. These things over a long period of time stack up and change can be done. For so many people, they'll go to the gym one day and they'll be like, why don't I have a six-pack? They'll eat a salad and they'll be like, why haven't I lost 20 kilos? All these things take time. They take days, weeks, months, and sometimes even years. For me, my own journey, it's still an ongoing journey. It took me years to be able to get a grip on my arthritis. And something I still struggle with is how to deal with it and how to manage those symptoms. And I think the last thing that I want to touch upon is the fact that G made space to hear themselves, to take time to reevaluate their decisions, their directions, where they want to go, where they want to head, what their priorities are. Because you need that time, you need that freedom and that space to be able to listen to that voice in your head. Not the one that tells you to keep going further and further, not the one that tells you to keep pushing harder, faster, further, but the one that tells you to take a second, put the phone down, go for a walk, and hear what the voice has to say. Are you happy with your direction, your actions, where you're going? Are you happy with who you are? These are questions you have to ask, and they're questions that you won't ask yourself during a busy work week on a Wednesday afternoon. These are questions that you have to ask after not being on your phone for 2 days. You just need to give yourself some space and some time. And at its core, burnout isn't from overworking. It's from being disconnected with what is your priority. Disconnecting from what you need and not what you want, because they are two very different things. And if this story hits home, I completely get it, because I was burnt out as well. I do offer private one-on-one coaching, so if that's something that you're interested in, click the link below, reach out to me directly. I'd love to have a chat, see where we can help. And if you're feeling like you're burnt out and wanting to know exactly how burnt out you are, there's a quiz in the link in the description that will give you a burnout score. Burnout does not have to be your life. And making sure you're putting the right steps in place to be able to address it is really important. Also, YouTube thinks that you should watch this video here, and I think I'd agree with them. So click this video here.